I ran the coffee kiosk on Concourse 9 of the Halvora Transit Depot for 6 years before anyone important noticed the dog. His name was Beck. German Shepherd, gone gray around the muzzle, with one ear that never stood up quite right after a puppyhood case of mites. He slept under the counter on a folded moving blanket, and most days the only thing he did was lift his head when the espresso machine hissed, then put it back down. The depot crew called him the mascot. Some of the dock workers brought him bits of dried protein from their ration packs, took these politely, the way an old man accepts a second slice of cake he doesn't really want, and went back to sleep. That morning the parts shipment was 3 days late. I knew it was bad before I heard a word, because the depot floor, usually a slow churn of cargo lifters and crew rotating through for coffee, had gone still in that specific way crowds go, still right before they stop being a crowd and start being a mob. 40, maybe 50 dock workers, packed loose around the cargo bay doors. Halvoran stevedores mostly, squat, four-armed, gray-skinned, built for hauling, but a scattering of other crews too. Toveni loaders with their long necks craned high to see over everyone, a knot of Drevek security in their red pipe jackets standing too close, together. At the center of it was Vethric. I knew Vethric. Quartermaster mid-level, the kind of alien who'd found one rule in the manual and decided it was the only rule that mattered. He had a voice that could carry across a depot floor without him raising it, which he was using now. "There is no shipment," he was saying. "There is no shipment, and there will be no pay cycle, and I am not going to stand here and be blamed for the supply chain of an entire sector." Someone in the crowd said something I didn't catch. Vethric's head snapped toward the voice. "Find someone else to threaten," he said. "I didn't break the relay. I didn't lose the cargo. I am simply the one standing here when you decided to be furious about it." Crowd didn't like that. The sound it made wasn't words anymore, just a low collective noise, the kind that gets louder before it gets violent. Two of the Drevek security put their hands on the batons at their belts, not drawing them, just letting everyone see that they could. I kept making coffee. Force of habit. Mostly, my hands needed something to do, and the line in front of my kiosk hadn't actually gone anywhere, even with half the depot about to come apart 60 meters away. A Toveni loader I recognized, a regular, was watching the crowd over his shoulder with his neck craned at an angle that had to hurt. "This is going to go bad," he said to me, conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. "Probably," I agreed, and handed him his cup. Under the counter, Beck got up. I felt him before I saw him, the shift of weight against my ankle, as he climbed to his feet, the long stretch he did every time, front paws out, rear end in the air, like he had nowhere to be, and all the time in the world to get there. Then he walked out from behind the counter. I almost called him back. That's the truth of it. My first instinct was, "Beck, no, stay." Because 50 angry dock workers and 2 armed Drevek security and a quartermaster one bad word away from a riot is not generally where you want your dog wandering off to. But he was already moving, that slow unbothered trot, ears up, well, one ear up, tail doing its easy metronome sweep, and some part of me that had spent 6 years watching this dog decide things knew that calling him back wasn't going to do anything. It make me look nervous in front of a crowd that was already nervous enough for everyone, so I didn't call him back. I just watched. He went straight across the open floor, not around the crowd. The edge of it, where the press of bodies was loosest. And the Halvoran stevedores nearest him looked down, did a sort of full-body flinch and step back that four-armed people do especially well, and then looked at each other like they weren't sure what had just startled them. A dog. Just a dog ambling through, tail going, completely unhurried, like he was crossing a kitchen to get to his water bowl. Vethric saw him coming and made the mistake every alien on this depot eventually makes. "Get this animal off the floor," he said, to no one in particular in the same flat carrying voice. "This is a labor dispute, not a..." Beck reached him and leaned. That's the only word for it. He didn't sit. He didn't sniff. He walked up to Vethric, quartermaster, mid-level, voice like a public address system, 200 kilos of furious dock workers behind him, and leaned his whole shoulder against the alien's leg. The way he leaned against my leg every night, while I locked up the kiosk, the way old dogs lean on the person they've decided, for whatever reason, Needs leaning on right now. Then he looked up at him. Looked soft brown eyes, gray muzzle, tail still going at that same slow, patient rhythm. Vethric stopped talking. I want to be precise about what happened next. Because it wasn't dramatic. People who weren't there always want it to have been dramatic. Nothing attacked anything. No alarms blared. If anything, the depot got quieter. The ambient noise of 50 angry people dropping by degrees as more and more of them noticed what was happening at the front of the crowd. A dog, leaning on the quartermaster. Looking up at him with an expression of complete, bottomless calm, like the entire argument was happening several rooms away and didn't concern either of them. Vethric looked down at Beck. Beck's tail kept going. Vethric said, and stopped again, I think, and I've had 10 years to think about this, that what got him wasn't the dog itself. It was that the dog clearly wasn't afraid. 50 furious dock workers, 2 armed guards with their hands on their batons. Quartermaster about to either back down or escalate into something that couldn't be walked back. And into the middle of all of it strolls an old animal who looks like he hasn't had a single worrying thought in his entire life. And who has apparently decided that this exact moment with all of this tension in the air is a good time for a nice lean against someone's leg. There's a kind of confidence that can't be argued with, because it isn't aimed at you. It's just there. Taking up space, completely unbothered by whatever you brought to the room. Vethric reached down, slowly, like he wasn't sure his hand would do what he told it, and put it on top of Beck's head. Beck's tail sped up, just slightly. He leaned harder. Nobody in that crowd moved for what felt like a long time. Then, somewhere near the back, one of the Halvoran stevedores said something low in their own language, and a few others laughed. Not a mean laugh, the other kind. The kind that happens when a room that was about to break suddenly doesn't have to. Vethric straightened up. He didn't apologize. That wasn't going to happen. Not from him, not that day. But his voice, when he spoke again, had lost the flat carrying quality. It sounded like a person's voice. The relay fault is upstream of the depot, he said. I'll have it escalated within the hour. Pay cycle proceeds on schedule regardless. That's not negotiable, and it never should have been on the table. He looked down at Beck again, not moved, who showed no sign of moving. Someone get this animal a bowl of water. The crowd didn't cheer. It wasn't that kind of moment. It just dissolved the way crowds do when the thing they were bracing for stops being necessary. People drifted back toward their stations, talking among themselves in lower voices, some of them throwing glances back at Beck, like they weren't quite sure what they'd just watched. Beck stayed leaning against Vethric's leg for another few seconds. Then, satisfied with whatever job he'd decided he had, he turned around and trotted back toward the kiosk, back toward me, tail still going, completely unbothered, like he'd just stepped out to check the weather. He climbed back under the counter, did one more turn on the blanket, and went to sleep. Toveni Loader, the one who'd told me this was going to go bad, was still standing at my counter. He looked at Beck, then at me, then back at the depot floor, where Vethric was already on a comm unit, voice calm now, arranging the relay fix. What was that? He asked. I refilled his cup. That's just Beck, I said. He does that. Vethric came by the kiosk himself near the end of my shift. He didn't say much. Bought a coffee he didn't drink. Stood there a moment looking at the dog under the counter. Then he sat down, next to Beck's blanket, a small ceramic bowl. Depot issue, the kind they used for the working animals down in cargo. He filled it with water from his own canteen, careful not to wake him, and left without another word. He brought a bowl every shift after that. Different ones, sometimes. He seemed to be working through some kind of personal collection. Beck never thanked him for it. Not in any way a person could point to. He just kept sleeping under the counter, kept lifting his head when the espresso machine hissed, kept leaning his weight against whoever happened to be standing nearby when the room needed it. The relay got fixed. The pay cycle ran on time. Nobody on Concourse 9 ever called him just a dog again. Not where I could hear it anyway. He still slept through most of it.